Welcome to my grammar time. Today's grammar is clauses of contrast or clauses of concession. Why do we use it? Clauses of contrast are used to express contrast. They are introduced with the following words, taught or phrases: although, even though, informal, despite, in spite of, while, whereas, but I, on the other hand, yet nevertheless, however. There are some examples with however, but, and so. There are some examples with despite of while still. But we use but with clause, main clause, then clause of contrast, and we use but before clause of contrast. For example, she studied hard, but she failed the exam. We put comma if the main clause stays before the clause of contrast. On the other hand, we use on the other hand with clause. She studied hard. On the other hand, she failed the exam. We use on the other hand at the beginning of the clause of contrast, and we put comma. Yet, formal variant, we use yet with clause. She studied hard, yet she failed the exam. We use yet as the preferred alternative to but when we want to emphasize that contrast to achieve a stronger effect. Still, we use still with clause. She studied hard. Still, she failed the exam. We use yet instead of still. We put still with comma and then clause of contrast. While, we use while with clause. We use while in the middle of the sentence before clause of contrast. Whereas we use whereas with the clause. She studied hard, whereas she failed the exam. It is the same like with while. Nevertheless. We use nevertheless with clause. A comma is always used after nevertheless. She studied hard. Nevertheless, she failed the exam. However, we use however with clause. The comma is always used after however. She studied hard. However, she failed the exam. Although, we use although with clause. Although can be in the middle of the sentence and at the beginning of the sentence before clause of contrast. Even though, we use even though at the beginning of the sentences or in the middle of the sentences before clause of contrast. Even though is more emphatic than although. Though, we use though with clause. We place though at the beginning of the sentences or in the middle of the sentences and even at the end after comma. Though is informal and is often used in everyday speech. In spite of, we use in spite of with the phrase the fact that clause. They aren't happy in spite of the fact that they are rich. Or we can say, in spite of the fact that they are rich, they aren't happy. Despite, we use despite with the phrase the fact that and clause. They aren't happy despite the fact that they are rich. Or despite the fact that they are rich, they aren't happy. We use in spite of without the phrase the fact that with noun. They aren't happy in spite of their richness, or in spite of their richness they aren't happy. Instead of noun, we can use gerund. This is verb with ing ending. They aren't happy in spite of being rich, or in spite of being rich, they aren't happy. Despite we use despite with the noun. They aren't happy despite their richness, or despite their richness, they aren't happy. We use despite with gerund. They aren't happy despite being rich, or despite being rich, they aren't happy. Thank you for watching. Good luck.